Listen, my children, to what I tell you this night. In the great city of Eco Meridian, where the towers touch the clouds and the streets glow with 10,000 lights, something terrible awakened. It was a Saturday when the bells began to ring on their own. Nneka burst through the cathedral doors like a woman running from death itself. Her clothes were soaked dark. Rain. No. Blood. In her trembling hands, she held money, bundles of cash, and she was screaming. The church members surrounded her, their faces confused, their hearts afraid. "The money!" she cried, her voice breaking like thunder. "The money cries at night. It whispers. It bleeds." Her eyes were wide, wild with a truth nobody wanted to hear. The lights inside the great cathedral flickered once, twice, then darkness swallowed everything. The doors slammed shut with a sound like bones breaking. And the bells, they rang louder, faster, as if the church itself was screaming. Then, on the massive screen behind the altar, a face appeared. Smiling. The minister's face. Minister Chibuzo. But he was not in the room. Nobody had touched the screen. Nobody had called him. Yet there he was, grinning down at Nneka from that impossible light, his teeth too white, his eyes too knowing. And the bells rang on. Let me take you back, my children, to 6 months before that terrible night. The city was hungry then, hungry for hope, hungry for miracles, hungry for anything that would make their broken lives feel whole again. That is when Minister Chibuzo came. He arrived on a Tuesday morning when the sun was high and the air was thick with heat. His billboards went up overnight. A smiling face, teeth like pearls, eyes like stars. A city redeemed by faith, the words promised. Come and be saved. The Ark of Mercy Cathedral rose from the ground like a prayer made of glass and steel. It was the most beautiful church the city had ever seen. The screens were larger than houses. The seats were soft leather. The air smelled of roses and money. People came in thousands. They lined the streets. They wept. They believed. But there was one man, an old homeless man, who stood outside the cathedral gates, watching. He did not smile. He did not come inside. One day he whispered to someone passing by, his voice like wind through a graveyard. He came back again, the old man said, shaking his head. Just like his father. Just like before. The miracles began almost at once, my children. A woman in the 3rd row, sick for 5 years, stood up during the sermon and danced. "I am healed," she cried. A young man claimed his debts had vanished overnight. An old widow said her pension had tripled. The city watched and believed. They came with their savings, their hope, their last coins. The offering plates filled so fast that the church needed new ones. Nneka worked in the back room, counting the money each day. Stacks and stacks of it. But something was wrong. She did not know what, not yet. The notes felt warm, warmer than money should ever feel. And they smelled strange, like metal and something else. Something ancient. Like rust. Like rust mixed with flowers. She would hold a bill to her nose and feel a faint vibration, almost like a heartbeat. The other workers did not notice. They counted and smiled and spoke of blessings. But Nneka noticed everything. She kept the strangeness inside her chest like a seed waiting to grow. One day, as she sorted through the envelopes, she found a note that made her blood go cold. Inside it was money, but also a name. Her husband's name. Written in shaky handwriting. Marked with something red. My husband was a good man, Nneka had told the minister 2 months before. He died suddenly during a service. A heart attack, the doctors said. But Chibuzo had smiled and said, "Your husband gave the ultimate offering, his life for your salvation. He is blessed." Those words had comforted her then. But now, finding his name in the ledgers, that comfort turned to ice. She joined the choir after his death, seeking peace in the singing, in the prayer, in the community of believers. The other singers welcomed her. They called her sister. They held her hand. But Nneka watched everything. She watched how Chibuzo's eyes moved during the sermons, how they seemed to search the crowd, hunting for something. She watched how he touched people's foreheads before they gave their biggest donations. She watched how the sick who were healed often looked confused afterward, as if they did not remember their own healing. And she watched the minister's hands. His large, pale hands. They were always cold. Even in the heat of the city, even beneath the bright lights of the cathedral, his hands were cold as death. One midnight, the church held a special vigil. Chibuzzo called it a night of supernatural abundance. The entire congregation gathered in the dark cathedral, lit only by candles. Outside, the sky had turned ugly purple. Thunder rolled across the buildings like the voice of God grown angry. Then the rain came. But it was not clear. It was not normal. As it fell against the enormous glass dome of the cathedral, people gasped. The rain looked red. Like blood. Dripping down the glass. Pooling on the floor. "Do not be afraid," Chibuzzo said from the pulpit, his voice calm and smooth. "This is a sign of cleansing. The heavens are washing away your sins." The people believed him. They sang louder. They swayed and prayed. But Neca stood frozen, staring at the minister. As he descended the steps, his white cuffs, the expensive linen cuffs of his shirt, showed something wet. Something crimson. He wiped them quickly, but not quickly enough. Neca saw. When the service ended and people shuffled out into the strange red rain, Neca stayed behind. She walked to where the minister had stood. The floor was dry. Perfectly dry. As if the blood had never been there at all. 3 days later, Chibuzzo called Neca to his private office. It was decorated like a palace. Mahogany furniture, golden crosses, paintings of saints with knowing eyes. "Sister Neca," he said, his smile warm as fever. "You have suffered great loss. God has put it in my heart to help you rebuild." He handed her a bundle of money. More money than she had ever seen. Enough to buy a new house, to start fresh, to forget. "This is a gift," he said. "From one servant of God to another." She took it. She had to. His hand held it out, and refusing seemed like refusing God himself. The money felt warm. Almost alive. It smelled of rust and roses. That night, alone in her small apartment, she heard voices. Whispering. Counting. A sound like wind moving through an empty place. She held the money close, and the whispering grew louder. The voices were speaking a language she did not understand, but their tone was sad. Begging. She woke in the morning drenched in cold sweat. Her bedsheet was damp with something sticky. Red. And the money, the bills were darker now, stained at the edges. When she tried to wash them, the water turned black. They would not clean. They would not become normal again. The voices inside them grew louder with each passing night. During choir rehearsal one Wednesday evening, Neca was organizing hymnals when she heard 2 elders speaking in the back of the loft. Their voices were low, urgent. "The unseen collector grows hungry," one said. "The minister feeds it well." Neca's breath caught. She crept closer, hiding behind a tall shelf. "But how long can it continue?" the other elder asked. "Surely the city will notice." "The city sees what it wants to see," the first elder replied. "Abundance blinds the eyes. Fear silences the mouth." Then they fell silent. Neca leaned out slightly to see their faces. But they were gone. The loft was empty except for her and the shadows. Her heart hammered in her chest. She looked down at the floor beneath the choir podium where they had stood. There, hidden in the darkness, was a stain. A handprint. In blood. It had soaked into the wood, becoming part of the ancient grain. She touched it carefully. It was still warm. That same night, as Neca walked home through the dark streets, a figure stepped from the shadows. It was the old homeless man from the cathedral gate. His clothes were torn, his face weathered like old leather, but his eyes were sharp. Alive. Knowing. "You see what others do not," he said to Neca. "You feel what others ignore. That is your burden now. What do you want?" Neca asked, frightened. The old man pressed something into her hand. A coin. Ancient and heavy. Immediately, it burned her palm. She tried to drop it, but her fingers would not move. "Ask him where the money comes from," the old man said. "Ask him about his father. Ask him about the pact." Then he melted back into the darkness like smoke. That night, Neca kept the coin hidden under her pillow. It hummed through the darkness. She heard it singing, a mournful song in a language of blood and sorrow. The next morning, She learned that the homeless man had been found dead near the cathedral gates. His body was found in an alley, cold and stiff. The worst part, his tongue was missing, cut clean away, as if he had been punished for speaking truth. Nneka knew then that she was running out of time. She had to find answers. One night, after the evening service, she stayed behind. The cathedral was empty except for the night security guard, a man who always seemed to be sleeping. She slipped down the marble corridors until she found the accounting office. The door was locked, but it opened with just a push, as if it had been waiting for her. Inside, shelves held dozens of leather-bound ledgers. She opened one dated recent months. Names, dates, amounts of money. But next to some names, there were small red dots. Perfect little circles of red ink. She checked another ledger. The same pattern. Red dots. She rushed to her small phone and searched the names online. Every single name with a red had died recently. Heart attacks. Accidents. Sudden illnesses. Her hands shook as she photographed the pages. Then she heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps approaching down the hallway. She froze. The door creaked open. It was the minister's assistant, a thin man with hollow eyes. He was smiling. Too widely. "Sister Nneka," the assistant said softly. "Working late, are we?" His voice was rehearsed, like lines from a play performed 1,000 times. "I was just organizing," Nneka stammered, trying to hide her phone. The assistant walked closer. When he moved, he did not walk like a normal man. His movements were smooth, liquid, as if his joints bent in ways joints should not bend. "The red dots," he said, standing beside her. "You have questions about them." It was not a question. "They mark blessings fulfilled," he continued, his head tilting slightly. "Our donors have given the ultimate gift. They have entered into abundance eternal." His hand reached out and touched her shoulder. His fingers were ice. Worse than ice. They were the temperature of something that had never lived. Nneka gasped and pulled away. That is when she noticed his nose. Blood was dripping from both nostrils, sliding down his pale face. He wiped it calmly with the back of his hand. "There is too much light in these lower rooms," he whispered. "It makes us bleed. You should go home now. Forget what you have seen." The next morning, Nneka went to the police with her photographs and her story. The officers listened politely. They nodded. They took notes. But their eyes were empty. One of them, a captain with a tired face, spoke kindly. "Sister, you have lost your husband. Grief does strange things to the mind. The minister is beloved. He has helped thousands. People do not want to hear accusations. They want to believe in miracles." He pushed her photos back across the desk. "Let this go," he advised. "For your own peace." So Nneka tried to warn the congregation herself. She spoke before the service one Sunday. She told them what she had found. The people laughed. Some were angry. "The minister has blessed my life," one woman shouted. "How dare you speak against God's servant?" Others simply turned away, refusing to hear. That Sunday, Chibuzo announced his greatest plan yet. On every screen in the city, his face appeared larger than life. "We enter now the month of divine increase," his voice boomed across Eco Meridian. "Double your seed offerings, and receive back 100-fold. The heavens are opening. Abundance is falling like rain." The city celebrated. Businesses flourished. People smiled. They had chosen to believe. But belief does not protect from truth. A young man named Tund, who worked as an usher in the cathedral, began bragging about his new car. A beautiful vehicle, expensive and gleaming. "I gave my seed offering last month," he told everyone. "The refund came in as an inheritance from an uncle I never knew. God is good." 3 days later, Tund vanished. Simply gone. His apartment was empty. His family was frantic. Police searched. But all they found in his car, abandoned in the cathedral parking lot, were his keys and a single piece of paper. A note, written in shaky handwriting. It was soaked with blood. Nobody could read what it said. The words had bled away into red stains. That night, Nneka had a dream. She saw Tund kneeling before the altar in the cathedral. His face was peaceful, but his lips were moving. Speaking. "Neka," his dream voice whispered. "Neka, help me. I am drowning in red. I am counting coins that never end. Help me." She woke screaming. The dream was so real that she could still smell the blood. Could still hear his voice calling from beneath the floorboards of her own house. That same week, Neka was working in the back office when a sealed box arrived. It contained envelopes of tithes and offerings, fresh from the collection plates. As she opened it to file them away, her finger caught the edge of an envelope. A sharp cut. Blood welled from her fingertip. Almost automatically, a drop fell onto one of the bills. And something impossible happened. The blood drop did not stay on the surface. The bill absorbed it completely. Instantly. As if the money was alive and hungry. Neka jerked her hand back. The envelope felt warm now. Huh. She heard a sound, a whisper rising from inside the box. Voices. Chanting. Speaking in that same ancient language she had heard in the coin under her pillow. The chanting grew louder, echoing up through the floorboards themselves. She could hear it beneath her feet now. A chorus of voices singing from somewhere deep below the cathedral. Singing in agony. Singing in desperation. She ran to the door and locked it. But the voices followed her home. They sang through the walls. They sang through her dreams. Neka knew she had to find the source. The voices. The blood. The truth. One night, she returned to the cathedral during the late service when hundreds of people filled the pews. She slipped behind the pulpit, into the area where only the minister was allowed. Behind the massive carved altar, she found a stone panel. Her hands, guided by something she did not understand, pushed against it. It swung inward, revealing a hidden trapdoor. Below it, a staircase descended into absolute darkness. The smell rising from that darkness was overwhelming. Copper and roses and something ancient. Something evil. She took a candle from the altar and began to descend. The stairs were long. Longer than they should have been. Deeper than the building should allow. And the walls, they were lined with money. Offerings. Stacked and bundled, creating a tunnel of wealth leading downward into shadow. When she finally reached the bottom, she heard a whisper. Her late husband's voice. "Come," it called. "Come and see what I have become." The candlelight revealed a vast underground chamber. It was impossible. The building above was not large enough to contain such a space. Yet here it stood, a cathedral beneath the cathedral. An altar made of black stone sat in the center, surrounded by jars. Hundreds of jars. Each one filled with blood. And coins. Mixed together. Swirling slowly despite no movement, no wind. Each jar had a name tag attached. As Neka moved closer, her breath caught. She recognized the names. Members of the congregation. People who had died. People who had disappeared. And there, her husband's name. David. On the jar, his name glowed with a faint red light. His blood and coins swirled together in an eternal dance. She reached for the jar, her hand shaking. "Do not touch it." A voice came from the darkness. Neka spun around. Footsteps approached. Slow. Deliberate. The minister descended the stairs. But he was not alone. Something else descended with him. Something that moved like shadow, like wind, like a presence that had no body but held all the power of the world. From her hiding place behind a tall stack of jars, Neka watched. Chibuzo approached the altar and knelt. From beneath his robe, he produced a new ledger. And a knife. Not a large knife, small, silver, ancient. He pricked his own finger. Blood welled. He dipped a pen in it and began to write names in the ledger. As he wrote, the shadow thing circled him, whispering in that terrible language. Neka understood some of the words now. "A drop for wealth," Chibuzo chanted. "A life for abundance. We feed you and you feed us. The pact continues. The pact eternal." The shadow grew larger, hungrily consuming the words, the blood, the names. Names of people still living. People who had given their offerings, not knowing they had signed their own death warrants. Chibuzo finished writing and closed the ledger. He lifted his face to the darkness above, and his voice became layered, two voices speaking at once. His own and something else. Something that had been waiting for centuries. Soon, both voices said together. Soon the entire city will belong to us. Soon they will all feed the hunger. Then he stood, and he turned, directly toward her hiding place. His eyes were entirely black, entirely empty, and they were looking straight at her. Nneka ran. She did not think. She did not plan. She simply moved on instinct, on terror, on the ancient human need to survive. She bolted from her hiding place and raced back toward the stairs. Behind her, she heard the minister laugh, that layered laugh that was not entirely human. She climbed the endless stairs, her candle dropping behind her, leaving her in near total darkness. But she did not stop. She could feel the shadow thing chasing her, could feel its hunger, its rage at being discovered. She burst through the hidden panel and into the cathedral. The service was ending. People were leaving. She had to blend in, to move naturally, to not draw attention. But as she crossed toward the exit, a hand reached out and grabbed her. She screamed. Then the hand released her. Outside, the night air struck like cold water. She ran into the street. And that is when the blackout happened. Every light in Eco Meridian went dark at once. The street lights died. The buildings went black. The traffic lights failed. The city fell into absolute darkness. And in that darkness, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, 2 words, "He knows you saw." Desperate now, Nneka went to the authorities with everything. She told the police about the underground chamber, the jars, the blood, the names. She showed them photographs from her phone. The officers listened more seriously this time. They agreed to raid the cathedral that very night. Nneka waited in a police vehicle as officers entered the building, weapons drawn. Hours passed. Then the officers returned. Their faces were confused. "There is nothing there," the captain told her gently. "We searched the entire building. The basement is just concrete and pipes. No hidden chamber. No jars. No blood." Nneka felt the world tilt beneath her. "It was there," she insisted. "Below the altar. Behind the panel." But the captain shook his head. "The minister's lawyers have already contacted us. He is filing suit for defamation. You have made serious accusations without evidence, and you have damaged a good man's reputation." They released her from the vehicle. That night, Nneka's lawyer, the man who had promised to help her, died in a terrible car explosion. The vehicle simply caught fire for no reason, burning so hot that he could not be identified. The authorities called it an accident, a mechanical failure. But Nneka knew the truth. In the days that followed, an elderly man came to Nneka's apartment. He was the retired pastor she had seen watching from the back of the cathedral. His name was Father Isaiah. His hands shook, and his eyes held the weight of terrible knowledge. "Child," he said, sitting heavily in her small room, "I must tell you the truth, before you lose yourself to despair." Father Isaiah revealed what he had hidden for decades. Chibuzo's father had been a minister too. In another city, another time. He had led a congregation that grew and grew. The money flowed like rivers. The miracles never stopped. But eventually, people began to question. Strange deaths. Missing believers. An investigation began. The church was raided. But nothing was found. Everything underground had been sealed away somehow. When the old minister died, the congregation scattered, and the church was burned by angry families. But before he died, the minister's son, young Chibuzo, had inherited something. A knowledge. A covenant. "Your husband," Father Isaiah said gently, "gave what the pact required. He agreed to the offering without understanding the cost. The money you received is bound in blood magic. It cannot be given away. It only attracts more hunger." He pressed something into her hand. A pendant. Ancient silver shaped like a broken circle. "Wear this," he whispered. "It will hide your soul for a time. But Nneka, the mark is already on you. He touched you. You cannot escape completely." Father Isaiah told her everything then. The being they called the Collector. An ancient entity that existed in the space between life and death, between matter and shadow. It fed on human essence, on blood and breath and life force itself. But it could only feed where it had been invited, where a covenant had been made. Generations ago, the Chibuzzo family had made the pact. In exchange for wealth beyond measure, for power over others, for a life of abundance, they would serve as vessels. The collector would work through them, drawing life from their congregation. The minister was not truly in control. He was a puppet. The shadow thing was the real power. And it was growing stronger with each passing year. Every person who gives an offering is bound, Father Isaiah explained. Every blood drop added to the jars strengthens the covenant. Eventually, the collector will have enough power to break through entirely into our world. It will consume the entire city. As he spoke, his eyes began to roll backward. White showed where the iris should be. His body jerked violently, as if controlled by invisible strings. "No," he gasped. "No, it found me. It knows I spoke." And then Father Isaiah died. Not gently. His body twisted once, twice, and then fell limp. When Neka checked for a pulse, she found nothing. He had been dead for hours, she realized. But he had been speaking to her from beyond death itself. His final message delivered from the grave. In the days following Father Isaiah's appearance, Neka noticed something terrible. A mark had appeared on her wrist where Chibuzzo had touched her in his office. At first, it was barely visible, a faint symbol that looked almost like a rune. But with each passing day, it darkened and grew. The symbol seemed to writhe slightly, as if alive. It burned constantly, as if a thin knife was being dragged beneath her skin. She understood then that the mark meant she was claimed. She was on a list. She was debt to be collected. And the money that Chibuzzo had given her was accelerating the process. The bills in her purse had begun to bleed. Actual liquid blood seeped from them, staining her belongings. She threw them away, but more money appeared. Anonymous envelopes slipped under her door, each one containing blood-stained cash. She could not escape it. The more she tried to reject it, the more it came. Each envelope came with a note. Always the same words. Payment received. Balance due. And each night, in her dreams, she saw the jars. She saw the faces of the dead swirling in blood and coins. She saw herself reflected in the glass of each jar, and in that reflection, her eyes were entirely black. Neka knew what she had to do. She had to return to the cathedral one final time. Not to flee. Not to hide. But to face it. To end it. She cut her hair short and bought clothes that made her unrecognizable. She returned to the cathedral as a cleaning woman. The staff barely glanced at her. The mark on her wrist she hid beneath a bandage. She moved through the building slowly, methodically, until she reached the minister's office. The private sanctum. The room where Chibuzzo planned everything. Inside, she found what Father Isaiah must have known she would find. An entire wall was covered with mirrors. Floor to ceiling. Dozens and dozens of them, arranged in a careful pattern. And in each mirror, she saw faces. The people who had disappeared. The people marked for collection. They were trapped there, conscious, aware, but unable to escape. Her husband was in one mirror. Young Tund in another. Hundreds of faces, all pressing against the glass from the inside, all screaming silently. One face was closer than the others. A woman who looked like she was drowning. "Break it," the woman whispered through the mirror. "Break the mirrors, and we will help you. We will give you what you need." Neka did not hesitate. She took a chair and smashed the first mirror. Then the second. The sound echoed through the building like thunder. As each mirror shattered, the spirits trapped within erupted. Not in anger, but in gratitude. They surged out like wind, like smoke, like liberation itself. The spirits flew through the cathedral, short-circuiting the electrical systems. The screens began to flicker. The cameras that always recorded the services activated spontaneously. And impossibly, the live feed that was supposed to broadcast only to the congregation's private network reached the entire city. Every news station. Every screen. Every phone. The city watched as the spirits revealed everything. The hidden chamber beneath the altar, the jars of blood, the ledgers of names, Chibuzzo performing his dark rituals. The broadcast was impossible. It was interrupted. It should not have been happening. But it continued, unstoppable, as if the very fabric of the building was screaming the truth. Then Chibuzzo appeared in the sanctuary. He was changed. His eyes were entirely black now. His skin had taken on a grayish tone. His mouth opened too wide. And when he spoke, his voice was layered with that terrible ancient sound. "You have broken the vault," the creature said through him. "The collector is hungry." Nneka walked forward to meet him. The pendant Father Isaiah had given her burned against her skin, but she kept it on. Behind her, the city watched through 1,000 screens. Police were responding. Crowds gathered outside the cathedral. But inside, only she and the minister, only he and the thing that wore him like a suit. Chibuzzo rose into the air. His body levitated 3 feet above the ground. Blood began to flow from his palms, his eyes, his mouth. The symbol on Nneka's wrist burned so intensely that she cried out, but she did not stop moving forward. "I am the vessel of abundance," the creature declared, its voice shaking the very walls. "I am eternal. I am hunger itself. And you cannot stop me." Nneka reached into her pocket. She had prepared for this. She had taken the ledger from the hidden chamber. Father Isaiah's spirit had guided her hand to it. Now she held it above one of the candles from the altar. "For everyone you took," she said, her voice steady and clear. "For everyone you stole." She dropped the ledger into the flame. It ignited instantly, burning with an impossible black fire. The creature screamed. A sound so terrible that windows across the city shattered. Chibuzzo's body convulsed. The jars she had seen in her visions began to crack in the chamber below. The coins. The blood. The essence of 1,000 stolen lives. It all began to scream. The cathedral burned that night. Not with normal fire, but with the black flames that consumed everything. All the wood, all the stone, all the evidence of the darkness that had lived within those walls. When the firefighters finally extinguished it at dawn, nothing remained but ash and ruin. The collector was gone. The entity had been bound to that place, and when the ledger burned, it lost its anchor to the world. Chibuzzo's body was never found. Some say it turned to ash like the building. Others say it simply ceased to exist. The city called it an electrical accident. The media reported it as a tragedy. The police investigation found nothing. Life returned to normal within weeks. But Nneka never returned to her old life. She carries the knowledge now. She sees the world differently. The mark on her wrist has faded, but it never disappears completely. She walks the streets of Eco Meridian, and though the air has mostly returned to normal, if you know where to look, you can still smell it. The copper scent of blood. Faintly. In the ruins where the cathedral stood. In the shadows where faith has died. One coin survived the fire. Nneka found it in the ash. The ancient coin that the homeless man had given her. It hums softly in her pocket. A reminder. A warning. And sometimes, late at night, when the city sleeps, she whispers the truth that no one wants to hear. "If only they knew," she says to the darkness. "If only they knew why the minister's money smelled like blood. Perhaps then they would ask better questions. Perhaps then they would demand to see beneath the surface of miracles. Perhaps then they would protect themselves. But most people do not want to know such things. Most people would rather believe in easy blessings." And so the story continues, waiting to be learned by someone foolish enough or brave enough to ask, why does abundance sometimes come with the smell of rust and roses? Nd. If you enjoyed this tale, remember that every miracle has a cost. Not all blessings come from heaven. Ask questions. Demand truth. And never, never ignore the whispers of the forgotten.